Can you read it? This headline here. And the cartoon. This week's newspaper. Albeit not a popular newspaper. Okay. Big cartoon. Okay. Pearlstein, the nicest SOB at Time Inc. And then a little picture of Norm Pearlstein and a big one of Henry Luce. Go, baby. Thank you. Okay. He has no mic? Oops.
Coming from a newspaper that didn't run pictures, it seems only appropriate that I not have a mic.
Thanks.
Could you take a picture? I'm sitting.
Oh, yeah. We'll get one. Yes. You're not pregnant.
Is that all right? Yeah. You'll forgive me if I, in fact, do feel a little bit like the second part of that headline, a bit cranky and not very creative today. I pride myself on being a bit of a conformist and playing by the rules, and I seem to have broken most all of the rules of this session, all inadvertently and all to my detriment. First of all, I showed up not only with a suit but a tie and was promptly reprimanded for that, so I've certainly bowed in that direction. Secondly, I don't usually speak very well sitting in chairs. Thirdly, I didn't have a mic and because I didn't get rigged up. And fourth, I think that following Gary Burton is about the most intimidating, least creative thing I could imagine. I could very happily just ask for a martini and sit over there and just ask if he would continue playing for a while, and I think we'd all probably be a bit better off. It reminds me a little bit of that scene in the Jerry Lee Lewis movie Great Balls of Fire, where he precedes Chuck Berry. The only difference is that I'm not Chuck Berry. Moreover, I've been asked by our host to kick off some discussion about news, storytelling, and history, and I presume that that includes some thought about how it plays out in new media. I tend to think of these things somewhat narrowly, being a creature of print, indeed only recently having discovered pictures. And I also think particularly about journalism, and more especially about enterprise journalism, the really hard stuff to do that makes a lot of us in the business feel good about what we're doing. And I come with a not very cheery view of the future. When it comes to new media, I am a proponent of it. I've been involved in it for a fairly long time, and like many of you, I buy into the notion that the chip will allow this convergence of information, communication, and entertainment. I haven't found much that I would call journalism, and I'm not even sure that there's much appetite for news. I have felt for a while that to be successful in new media, you need to either have timeliness or specificity, call it personalization, and that a transaction may be the one thing that actually works, shopping. But I haven't really found storytelling very easy, at least at current speeds and with the emphasis on text. I think over time, the media will migrate to one that will be much more about pictures, something closer to the full-service network that Time Warner has struggled with such difficulty and with so few results. And at that point, perhaps if it's closer to television, there may be an expensive storytelling opportunity. But certainly at current speeds with current technology, I don't find much worth reading. And even worse, it seems most of the customers don't either. You'll be hearing from Michael Kinsley a little bit later, and as much as I admire Michael and his work, I do find it easier to read in print, even though it's not a magazine and not very colorful, and I would think that, in fact, the development of Slate to date is really a strong reminder of how little room there is to be successful with journalism online. Beyond that, I think what worries me is not just that the technology makes it difficult to do storytelling, but I think there are a couple other things that concern me. One is that while it can certainly deliver news in a timely form, it's not at all clear to me how many customers really need news in a timely form. Deng Xiaoping died a couple days ago. I don't think many of us really had to know that at 11:30 a.m. East Coast time when CNN went live with its headline on CNN Online. I think most of us increasingly find that, in fact, most news can hold, sometimes a day, sometimes a week, sometimes it seems years. Beyond that, I've been kind of curious about who these days is attracted to new media. I've said to people that the two real pockets of creative energy in America these days are the religious right and new media. And in both cases, I think there is some concern about what is driving the energy and where that passion is coming from. I won't get into the religious right at this point. That really would involve some creativity on my part. But when it comes to new media, while there was certainly a time where I think there was a level of idealism about it, increasingly it seems to me what is driving new media is commerce. Certainly it is because large enterprises like Time Warner have gotten involved in it, but it's also because even in the garages where supposedly creativity comes from, before anybody really gets a chance to do anything, there's a venture capitalist talking or whispering IPO. And I really think that the chance to trade in the Toyota for the Mercedes is very much what is driving and creating an awful lot of energy in the field, and that does not lend itself to the kind of passions that create great journalism or great storytelling. With that sort of cheery introduction, it's probably worth at least talking a bit about some of the implications of new media for old media, because there too I find not a whole lot of cause for cheer. Newspapers already, I think, with a few exceptions which I can talk about, really have cut back very much on their traditional mission, and the commitment to public interest and public service has given way to the need for respectable margins. Part of this is because of change of ownership from families to large publicly held companies, but I think part of it also is that the business model has not been working. Part of that is because of new competition for readers' time, whether it is from sitting in front of a screen or whether it is from watching television. Part of it is that the priorities and the perceived needs of traditional readers have changed. And I think that part of it is that the story, if you will, has changed along with it. My particular concern about newspapers, however, is that the business model has really existed very much with classified advertising as an important component, and if there's one thing I think new media is really going to be good at, it's classified advertising. And so when those margins start to erode, and they will at many large and small newspapers, the willingness to commit space for editorial will certainly give way with it as well. The newspapers that seem to be thriving in the face of that are those that have what I would call quasi-protected monopolies, either because, such as the Washington Post or New York Times, they're so dominant in their particular geographic area, or because in the case of the Wall Street Journal there's just such a clear sense of community among the people who read it that it's a must-read. There, too, and I think the Journal's interactive site is probably the most interesting one I've seen. It will only succeed by cannibalizing the paper itself. As for magazines, the one good news, I guess, from a self-serving point of view is that while I'm not sure about the long-term need for journalists, writers, and storytellers, it seems that editors survive. That the need for synthesis, analysis, for grinding up people's stories and memos to keep things tight, to keep things short, seems to be in the ascendancy. Even in the new media areas, if you look at these so-called push models that people like Business Week and Wired talk about, some people call what will emerge intelligent agents. I still tend to think of them as editors. And I think there probably is a difference between the two. Beyond that, at least short term, I think that magazines, be they niche publications or broad consumer publications, in a way benefit from the fact that when they try to migrate to new media, they do it so poorly. We certainly have not found a business model, although we think it's well worth the R&D and the effort to continue plugging away. The fact that so many new media projects for big multimedia companies have been taken over by the business managers looking for return on investment, I think says a lot about the fact that creativity is being pushed to the background. In our case, we've certainly learned that putting full text online does not create a compelling product that people are desperate to have. Some of that may change with very fast 4-color printers getting cheaper. I see some now which will do 6 pages a minute and 5 cents a page. If you can double the speed, cut it in half, and get magazine quality, maybe there's something that translates there, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. As for books, I think they're really not central to our culture at this point. Certainly if you look at the bestseller list, and I put aside fiction, if you don't have green hair and play basketball for the Bulls, if you're not involved with O.J. Simpson, and if you don't have your own television show, it is very hard to make the list. And the hollowing out of the middle in nonfiction, it seems to me, is really a kind of precursor of what is going to happen with a lot of our journalism, where indeed at a place like Time Inc., and I say this with actual pride in our accomplishment, People magazine, with its celebration of celebrity and entertainment, is many times more profitable than Time magazine with its commitment to authority and to longer form journalism and storytelling. If I have any sense in all of this of not being a total Jeremiah, it is probably from the comfort that so much of new media doesn't work. That for all of the promise of the future, and some people like Walter Mossberg in this room who have known my interest in technology going back to water wheel cars 25 years ago, will understand that you have to take some of this with some skepticism, but even something as simple, urgent, and important for business or for communication as email is something that no one has yet been able to get right. And I think with all of the hype that has gone on with new media, the short-term potential for mass consumer backlash, as nothing really delivers what it promises, as productivity doesn't really go up, actually does create some opportunities for people in journalism. Beyond that, you do see occasional signs that suggest that if writers, reporters, and editors focus on the right story, there may indeed be opportunity for storytelling and for the kind of public service journalism that I think has been so important in the past. Certainly, two writers who have gotten away with less editing than any editor would ever enjoy, Don Bartlett and Jim Steele, have shown that if you focus on rotten barrels instead of rotten apples, if you're truly willing to question some of the basic premises of our society, you can get a very strong emotional response to it. When they wrote their 18,000-word series for the Philadelphia Inquirer, America, What Went Wrong, focusing particularly on special interest groups, they got, in the city of Philadelphia, requests for more than 40,000 reprints. Not 40,000 copies, but 40,000 people asking for reprints. When they converted it into a book, it went to the bestseller list nonfiction for 26 weeks, which I think is even longer than Dennis Rodman was there. I think that at some level, it behooves those of us who are still making buggies, still engaged in print, to really understand that there are certain business models that make sense, that make you successful. Certainly, I think we have been able to get a lot of those economics right, but that to truly be successful, you really have to go back to some of the early origins of print, to being provocative, to being unpredictable, and to really taking some risks with longer form stories that will not fit every accountant's dream of what news and journalism should be about. So with that, I'm afraid that I don't really have much more that I can tell you about this except to respond to any questions you may have during the question and answer period a little bit later. Thank you for letting me join you today.